He's going to say exactly. Okay, so we were just chatting away. You know what? I keep calling you Nazish. What's your name again?
Narish.
Narish. And I'm probably going to call you Nazish again. I've probably heard that name somewhere, and it's going to keep coming up. But Narish.
Yeah. Well, I
No.
noticed everyone keeps calling you Khalid when I thought it was Khalid.
Who calls all the British lot call me Khalid. My name is Khalid, but
That's
who's going to go
right.
Kha? Who's going to go Kha? It's not in the alphabet, in the British alphabet. So, and I automatically say Khalid if I'm talking to an English person. It's just, I've been there my whole life. I'm not going to go Kha. People will be like, what's wrong with your throat? Do you know what I mean? But over here, I've had to practice saying my name properly. So for people who don't know, I'm in Jordan, in the Middle East, lovely country, beautiful weather, beautiful people. They speak Arabic, different letters. I used to be in England, met so many wonderful people in Speakers Corner and stuff like that. That's where I met your niece, who's Zarina, also aka the rational female. And then, did she introduce you to my videos? Is that how you found out? You must have.
No, you was doing interview with her, which I just happened to come across. I
Ah,
saw the interview and I liked it so much. I started following you, and I
yeah.
subscribed to your channel. Then you noticed I voraciously went through all your various interviews because I really enjoyed it.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
it's quite an honor to be invited now onto your.
Oh, fantastic. It's an honor for me, definitely. Um, and I don't just say that. I mean, like, I know when if sometimes if I've got nobody to talk to, it's very dull. The videos are still of content, good quality. I mean, I say good quality in the things that it's important. The stuff I wanted to say that's important still comes out. But it's completely different talking to another person, getting feedback, making sure somebody actually understands what I'm saying. I'm not just talking. So really do appreciate you being here. But I don't like to talk too much. I like to get into things really quickly. And so here we go. So I want to start off by what are all my streams about? We were just saying something. You were just saying something, and I say stop because I'm about to say the same thing, but I'm going to say it over here. So you were saying you were going through certain book, Philosophy of the Teachings of Islam, the works of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, known as the Promised Messiah, the second coming of Jesus. You yourself are Hindu, is that right?
Yes, that's
Just,
correct.
just to confirm for everybody that I'm not making things up. Okay, and so he started a magazine over 100 years ago, 1902, called the Review of Religions. It's still going. My cousin is uh, doing, I don't know what they call it, editor of it. And I have this at the background on my desktop on my computer always to remind me what my goals are, because my goals are the same goals as this magazine. And you were saying this is what the promised Messiah wanted. He wanted interfaith dialogue. And the words used here are exactly how I feel. So it goes the objective of this magazine and then the objective of all my videos. Um, I often just say it's happiness class, but I think this is maybe more accurate, more precise. The objective of my videos is to present the teachings of Islam, reflecting its rational, harmonious. So I'm always very calm, and I don't like to fight people. Sometimes I have a laugh if somebody is having a go at me, which has often happened. And inspiring. I hope people are inspired. It also brings together articles and viewpoints of different religions. So you're a Hindu, I'm a Muslim. We're going to talk, and usually there's so much to agree on in this world where everybody's fighting. It's nice to hear people trying to understand each other. Um, different viewpoints. I think it's incredibly important. Seeks to make discussions on religions and religious philosophy accessible to a wider readership. So there's two things here. Um, I try to talk. The thing you just said, there were so many things that I loved about what you just said. I don't know if I've already forgotten if it was on air or off air, right? About how you came across my videos. Was that on air?
I think so. I think
I
so.
think so, right? The thing is, I purposely try to talk to so many different types of people, completely different to me. And then those people know completely different kind of people. So I hate the idea of being an echo chamber. I want to be the opposite of an echo chamber. So I keep reaching different people. And I'm not interested in reaching necessarily millions of people. I'm just interested in truth seekers. If I can find one or two, I'm happy. My job done. Thank you for being here, because you certainly seem to be a truth seeker. So that's one thing. And the other thing that one reason I thought, you know what, I really want to bring this up, and I tried to say it, but I'm not. Maybe I haven't said it very clearly. I try not to be complicated. I had a fear when we were going to talk about the soul that is going to somehow sound academic, and I hate academic. I'm here to try to make it as simple as possible, because I truly don't want to just have a academic conversation. I want to save lives. I want to make a difference. And really, this is how you save lives. You know, like, people don't want to be stressed. They don't want to commit suicide, which is absolute. It's insane that that's the number one way young people die. That is something that should not be made light of. That should be a huge concern for every human being in the West, you know, that this is happening. And sometimes I think, how much worse does it have to get for people to take spirituality seriously and realize that's what's happening, or we're lacking it? So that, and what else has it got to say here? The magazine is devoted to promoting intellectual, lively debate. I think we always have lively debates with different opinions, and it's based on respect for all prophets. I respect you. You know this because we've been having loads of conversations. But I respect Krishna as a prophet. You know that we've had this discussion, right? At some point,
You've explained that, yes.
on WhatsApp. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to accept that, but and religions, whichever way we look at it, Islam repeatedly stresses the need to seek knowledge, and the review religion provides that unique platform. I'm going to be very clear. I'm a blunt person. I told my cousin, who's editor of this magazine, his magazine never does this. But then that's a different discussion. So I just don't want to pretend I'm promoting it. I want it to be good. It used to be really good a long time ago, this magazine. But anyway, all right. So I scrolled that. Okay. So I have a script. I don't know if I'll necessarily go by the script, because often when I start reading it, it's not, the sentences don't make sense. But anyway, let's get going. What are we talking about? Starved Western souls. Do you have anything to say about all the stuff I just said, by the way? I was doing a lot of talking.
No, I totally agreed with the whole idea of promoting interfaith dialogue. It's the only way that we can actually progress forward as a society. Yes. If we don't understand each other, or we don't understand where we're coming from or where we're going, then it seems like a pointless exercise. Whereas once we discuss things like religion, philosophy, spirituality, even say theological law, it all has more meaning. It helps each one of us evolve.
Yeah. And I mean, like you say, how can we possibly be united? We want to be united in humanity. We're one human family. It's better that we do connect and try to understand each other. And I find when we calm down and stop trying to win, that we connect. And it's so beautiful that why not? So yeah. Starved Western souls. Okay, I'm going to put it. I'm not even sure if I want to read it from here, but I'll say what comes from my heart right now. It's so sad that people are suffering so much, when, from my point of view, from what I can see, they really don't need to. And I try to keep it so short and simple, because if people listen just to the first few minutes and gain something, all I want to say is really that if people can understand what they really need, and that's spirituality. And spirituality, I don't even like using the word because it's being ruined so much, but it's doing meaningful things. We don't need to eat 1 million donuts. It makes you sick. The physical body doesn't need tons of stuff. It's just it. Yeah. So that's coming from my heart. I'm just going to read the stuff, and then I want to hear your opinion. And this is me just. I'm trying to break things into really short chunks. Here we go. And people want to read this. They can read this afterwards. I always leave it in the pinned comments in the video afterwards. The West is the most suicidal place, despite being the most affluent. They find the world so brutal because they have starved their souls and only fed their bodies. We are a soul first, and the body is only its container. Sure, the body needs to exist, but the soul is not only where happiness resides, but sanity itself. God is the only satisfying food for the soul, as well as the guide we cannot do without. This can be demonstrated by the fact that statistically, religious people do not suffer the same way. I'm making a lot of claims here, but I'm basically, this is all I want to say today, and I want to try to back that up in different ways. And it won't be a perfect backup. It will be my best attempt, but that's my intro. Any thoughts about that so far?
No, I think I totally agree with you. And I think the main problem here is really, as you pointed out, it's the lack of religion. The situation we've got here in the West is the West was once a Christian society. It held Christian values. It followed the teachings of the New Testament and the Old Testament quite closely. And those values were reflected in society. Unfortunately, it's moved away from that. And as society, Western societies moved away from the sort of Christian teachings, it's lost God. And in losing God is creating the things where a person can't progress any further than that sort of first stage, that savage stage. They're stuck in that hedonistic loop of wanting more and not being able to progress spiritually. Whereas Christianity once taught you about how to behave, what the meaning of life was, the rules that you lived by, how you pleased God. All these have gone now. They're replaced with woke, ideological sort of rules which make no sense, which are totally fluid. And all these sort of like remove that sort of fundamental meaning from life, that thing that gives you structure, the thing that your mum and dad taught you when you were being brought up by your mum and dad, all those basic morals, everything that leads you finally to the stage where you sort of understand God better. The problem with the West is they've fundamentally lost that approach. Not everybody, but Western society as a whole has lost its way by removing religion away from the core aspect of its values.
100%. I want to back up some of the things you said, just some ideas. When you said England, or I don't know, probably the whole UK, used to even support the Old Testament, which is very different to, I don't know if it's very, how different, but the Old Testament is the more, say, just the strict side of things. I don't know if you've seen the video where, I think it was only 100 years ago, if you looked at it and you looked at the women, they looked like Muslim women. What I mean by that is they wore the headscarf and they looked very respectful. And this is the kind of thing you might see in the Greek Orthodox now, but only the very old Greek Orthodox, the 100-year-old grandmother kind of thing. And people go, oh no, the woke would say, oh no, that's oppression, but as you say, their ideas are very fluid. They don't stand on anything, because actually everything in religion can be supported by science. Interesting. I say everything, but let's say this is something I'm going to get on near the end of this stream, but it's really amazing that religious teachings they're like, for example, wearing a scarf, wearing modest clothing by choice is important. That has been shown to help with body image issues. And of course it does, because you don't want to represent yourself simply by your boobs and stuff like that. If I was to feel I had to wear skin tight clothes, I would feel insecure. If my belly would stick out of skin tight clothes. You know what I mean? I would look terrible. Imagine you have to spend your whole life dieting and everything just to look acceptable. It's good to be healthy. I'm not sure if I call it dieting, but I fast regularly. But it's not to look good to other people. It's a spiritual thing, and the body and the spirit are connected, or I say the soul are connected. But that's something we'll go into as part of I don't want to overlap too much, but yeah. There's so much I agree with you, and the woke ideas. I'm talking to on the weekend. I'm always talking to my woke brothers, Dust and Co. And they're one of the reasons why I love talking to them, because the ideas don't stack up at all. But I let people realize that themselves from our discussions. So thank you for those initial comments. Now you've got a bit of a lingo going on because you've been reading this book, The Philosophy of the Teachings of Islam. You talked about something to do. I don't know what you said in the beginning, but it sounded like the natural state, the initial state of the soul. So I've given a link to the book that you've been reading over the last few weeks, has it been? The Philosophy of the Teachings of Islam?
That's several weeks. When I mean reading, it's not a kind of book you just suddenly pick up and read in one sitting. You've got to read it, you've got to think about it, you've got to digest it. And many times to understand it, you need to go back and reread it. And sometimes you need to maybe do your own research to put everything in context. So it's one of these books which is profoundly fantastic, but you really have to pay attention to the philosophy that is being explained.
I've been reading it for about 30 years now, and it's only about 100 pages, about this thick. And the way I came to it first was anytime I was having a struggle of different sorts. So I was an atheist for a while, and then certain chapters attracted my attention. I was like, wow, mind-blowing stuff. And then I'd go back, and then I'd come across different people, and they would teach me the book in different ways through their own personal life experiences. So yeah, I can totally understand. It takes a long time. It's a thin but very deep book. So anyway, I put a link because pretty much everything, I don't know, pretty much everything, I think everything I'm going to say today is from that book. So let's move on. And so, as I say, I love keep doing the short versions. If anybody's going to get bored after the first 30 minutes, I want them to get something before they get bored. Okay, so here's a short version of everything I want to say. So first of all, the soul is a scientific reality. There's so many things that are pointing towards this other thing other than our bodies. So let me see what I've written here. The soul, or the conscience, if you want to call the conscience the soul, is both the common experience and well documented in science, as it leaves its mark on the body through our spiritual needs essential to our well-being. To keep it short, I missed out a million things there, but there's, Freud basically talked about these things, which we go into. And I saw your comments about it. You seem to know more about it than I do. Different psychologists have been talking about it. And this, of course, they've been talking about it. There is this thing, this weird thing, this conscience that we can't keep quiet, even if you're a bad person. You do your bad stuff. You want it to shut up, and it won't. There's something there, and we've all got it, and we've got all this strange rule book that we basically agree on. I think, I'm confident we all agree on. But yeah, there's something very mystical, something very real, and it's been pointed out by many people in many ways, not just psychologists, biologists, and all kinds of people through different things. So any initial comments about that? You might disagree. I think you said something like, I don't know, in your WhatsApp comment to me, you can't point it out through science. Maybe I'm exaggerating. I love to have the back and forth. Go on.
No, I did say that the things like the soul, we can't really measure, because science is based upon empirical evidence, which we either need to see, taste, hear, touch. And some concepts like the soul, or even, or God, or even happiness, they can't really be measured. These are particular concepts which require almost a different type of approach, a different type of science. And that is really sort of like theology and philosophy. And but then again, you're quite correct when you talk about science, because you mentioned Freud. Now, Freud was a father of psychology. And even though he wasn't religious, I mean, he was anti-religious. He thought religion was an illusion. But when he approached this idea of the soul, he came up with like these three concepts of the id, the ego, and the superego. Then when you look at, say, other thinkers, religions seem to say the same. There are these stages of the soul that the soul progresses through. What was it? Thinkers like Plato, Aristotle, they all believe the same. In his book, The Republic, Plato talks about the sort of the self that desires, the rational self, and the spiritual self. And quite amazingly, in his Holiness's book, he talks about the three states of man. Again, in Hinduism, we've got the concept of the Jiva, the Atman, and the Brahma. And even when we look at it, it's all, everything seems to be structured within religions on how we progress from one stage to the other. And Freud covers it, the great philosophers cover it, the great theologians and religions cover it. There's got to be something there. The soul exists sheer by the fact that so many people have been studying it or rationalizing it.
Beautiful. And just to point out for people who don't know this already, I mean, very few people would know this, I suppose. So as I said earlier on, I believe Krishna to be a prophet. So that basically means that the God who taught Islam also taught Hinduism. So it's no surprise that there are similar ideas in both. Not at all, not for me.
I wonder, at this particular point, that's something my dad taught me a long time ago, because obviously growing up as a Hindu in a Christian world and going to my local Gurdwara to pray, you can imagine it's quite confusing as to work out, well, what's going on here with God? And my dad taught me. He goes, there's only one God, and that's the one truth. And the wise people call him by all different names. And it's as simple as that. Without religions, the Quran, the Vedas, the Old Testament, the Torah, or whatever, I've always seen them as instructions for the way we should live that will make us progress to that one final point, that connection with God. It's steering us from the point when we're children with our hedonistic desires, wanting, making mistakes, to becoming rational, achieving our duty on earth, then having the time to connect with God spiritually.
Beautiful. And the Quran even has this very interesting approach that, yes, it would like people to become Muslim, but there's a verse that says, to the people of the book, at least come to this one agreement that we all have one God, which is what you're saying. And then when you do that, you're on the right path. Because the whole path is God. The whole point is God, And people say, a lot of people would say the people of the book is just the Christians and the Jews. But I would say, who said that? Who said that's the people of the book? What about the Vedas? Do you know what I mean? Go on.
I mean, the thing here is it's like we're humans. We can't second guess God. God sent many people throughout time. We've had teachers, gurus, rishis, prophets, all coming to guide humanity at the right time. Yeah. And the thing, if you think about it, is even when we have our prophets, we still go wrong. Even when we have our teachers, we make mistakes. So God, constantly needs to send someone to re-guide us back on the path. And it's not up for man to say who God sends and who he doesn't. We can't second guess God. And that's the way it is. We learn from these people. And like I was saying before, all religions point to one thing. There is only one God. And we need to connect with that one God. That's what religion teaches us. And everything is based upon us reaching that. Our teachings help us develop our soul to achieve that point. And, as we'll talk further, is our happiness is so dependent upon the progression of the soul towards God, because the more we progress across these three sources, the more closer we get to God and the greater our happiness becomes. And there is total scientific evidence to support this as well.
Yeah, it's so real. You might not be able to measure with a ruler or such a limited device as a ruler where the soul is, but there's so much other evidence saying the soul is real, from psychologists to biologists to whoever, right? So we'll come to that. There's so many other things you just said, but I'm going to stop trying to just reiterate everything you're saying, because I couldn't agree more in so many ways. But yes, let's move on to the next thing. Happiness depends on the soul. This is probably the key thing I want to say. If people can get this, I'll be so happy. Physical needs like food and exercise simply maintain the body, but needs like meaning and love are what make us happy. Both are essential as the soul lives in the body. But I write these things, and every time I write, I go, I should have wrote it better. And the way I could have wrote it better, and I'm trying, maybe I think I've written it earlier already. This, like, sure, the body's the container, but if we give the body all the attention and the key thing is what's inside, you are missing big time. And that's why people are so depressed, because really the real feelings are in the soul. It's in the subtle stuff. And because we've been accustomed to a very dull awareness of just the material, and we stop reflecting and thinking deeply. And you know what? If you just listen to your own feelings, you would know where to go. Do you know what I mean? But people have stopped doing that. They become dumb to their own feelings. And then they just keep going until they get suicidal. It's amazing to me that people can ignore themselves so much. What do you think?
I think that the problem is, again, they've taken God out of the equation. You're having people being brought up in families where no one teaches them anything about God, the soul, how to act in a religious way. The sort of rules that we got, for instance, you were talking about covering your head, about modesty, about not having sex before marriage, about honoring your parents, not stealing, all these kind of things. It's like when that seems to go, that's when society starts to spiral downwards. That's when its sort of level of happiness really starts to decrease. Well, it's like our soul is just like the body, as you're saying. We feed the body, but we don't feed the soul. And it's like, if we want a good body, we'll diet, go to the gym and train hard to get that six-pack and those muscles. Well, the same thing applies to your spirit, your soul. You need to put the same attention to get that same perfect self. It's like your soul can have that sort of soul six-pack and muscles and everything, but you've got to work for it. It doesn't come like that. Just like your six-pack doesn't, you work for it. And this
that,
is what,
and yeah, go on.
This is what our parents teach us. This is what our religion teaches us, how to behave. So eventually we can reach that particular position. What I did want to say at this particular point is, as we progress, like in Hinduism, it doesn't say it explicitly, but it talks about the various stages that we have in our life. And we've got the student stage, and at that particular point we're learning. So you almost say the first stage. The rational stage is the householder, where you have responsibilities, you have to look after your family. Then the third and fourth stage being one where you connect with God.
Yeah. So, okay, interesting. Okay. Yeah, and yeah, there were so many things I agree with. I think I just pick up one thing that often people don't I'm not sure if it's a side thing, but I'll say it really quickly. And it's like this. You said the you were making a comparison between how if we want to improve our body, we have to make an effort. And the same is with the soul and spirituality. Like some people think it's just mystical, it just happens, you just believe. No, you have to work really hard. You have to don't do small good deeds if those small good deeds are too easy. Do hard ones where it feels like an exercise. So that's what I'll say. I feel like a lot of the people I talk to, they don't realize that, and I think that's a really important thing. Yeah. So understanding the soul is essential. And again, another thing I kind of really want to point out. Okay. So the growth of the soul is evident and important to recognize so you know how to feed it. The big mistake Westerners make. I'm not even sure if I put this in the right bit. Wait a sec. Essentials. Okay, yeah, that is the right bit. Okay, the growth of the soul is evident and important to recognize so that you know how to feed it. The big mistake Westerners make is that they look back to their childhood, for how to have fun through meaningless excitement, but our grown-up souls will reject it and you will be depressed. Okay, probably a terribly written sentence. Let me say it maybe a better way. I don't know if you watched the series Friends. Do you remember that old 1990s series?
I remember it, but I didn't watch it, no.
Okay, it was basically all about being dumb. It was kind of hilarious, but it was kind of like trying to give this sense that you can really enjoy life by being stupid. It would just be people. There were just a bunch of people being stupid all the time. And there's a lot of movies that give that idea. There's Hangover 1, Hangover 2, Hangover 3, basically where they just have a hangover and they have the time of their lives, right? But that is so far from reality. And the reason why we think it might be reality is because when we were younger, we used to have fun doing dumb things, right? Because we were children, right? And children don't think about the meaning of life and whatever, but they do also poo in their nappies and stuff like that. They've got a lower level of consciousness. And the really big thing, this is just a short version still of what I want to say, but the really big mistake people, especially in the West, seem to make is that they think, oh, if only we just did what we used to do to make us happy, it would make us happy. But your awareness, your consciousness has increased. You can see that. You think about things more deeply. You don't accept pooing in your nappies. You don't enjoy the little things that you used to enjoy before because you've experienced it, you've grown out of it. Like if you go to any self-help guru, they're always talking about growth and developing, experiencing. Why? Because your soul is growing. The person you were yesterday has gone. Feeding that person yesterday, that soul yesterday, was not acceptable. That less conscious thing. I'm probably over explaining it now. But all psychologists, the greatest psychologists tell you what really makes you happy at the top. At the greatest level is some sort of meaning, and meaning is doing something important. So in short, avoid the big flaw that's harming everybody, which is trying to live a meaningless and stupid childish life. That soul has gone. Your soul is growing up. You must deal with that. I'm not sure how much that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. What we're saying basically here is the Western world seems to be not progressing any longer. It seems to be stuck at stage one. It's gone back to the hedonism, and it seems to be in a perpetual loop. We're taught how to sort of behave and how to progress, and it used to prepare them for a certain stage in their life when spirituality will come. Now, spirituality comes, and it doesn't come when you're young because you've got that sort of passion of youth and whatever. It doesn't come when you're a householder or a parent because you've got all that responsibility. But once you fulfill these, That's at the particular point when your spirituality develops. The only person who's actually explained that really clearly was His Holiness in the essay, when he talks about after the age of 40, does that awareness start to begin? And he equated it with the first 4 months in the womb. And I thought that was a wonderful way of explaining, because it makes sense why we're taught by our religion how to behave, how to act. And it's our soul training to train us to the part that once we've filled our responsibility and we hit that sort of 40th year mark, that we're going to start to yearn God even more. And what the whole purpose of religion is to prepare us for that stage. The difficulty is in the West, when they don't know that they're progressing towards that one stage, they're in that perpetual loop of hedonism. They've lost sight of progressing and they're stuck.
Brilliant. I'm going to explain, because you've been reading these books and you've kind of absorbed it and you're just speaking out lingo. People who have not read this book might be wondering what you're talking about. So I'm going to try to explain it a little bit. And I think it's so important that when I'm listening to you, I realize people who want to go on a spiritual journey, they think it's going to suddenly happen. They're suddenly going to be spiritual. And that's not true for anything in life. It's always a journey. And it's also really helpful. Listening to you is also really helpful to know the stages where you're at. Because then you can say, oh, yeah, that's where I am. And this is where I'm going. This is where I need to be. Okay. And I'm trying to resist talking about those 3 stages that you've been reading about. But I suppose I'll say it really quickly. There's an animal stage, the hedonistic stage, basically where you just go by your desires, but it doesn't work. And we'll give the interesting name and descriptions of it soon. And then I want to disagree a little bit. I love to disagree as well. Anyway, it's not that you can't be spiritual, let's say, when you're raised, and maybe we'll agree on this anyway, but it's not that you're not spiritual when you're raising your family and things like this, but it is a middle sort of stage where you are struggling. And then there's eventually you're trying to get to a stage where you're struggling less, where you're free from, let's say, your carnal desires, the need for sex and all these different things. Not that you don't have sex anymore, but that sex is like your number one goal. It doesn't, and getting more money is your number one goal, and being powerful and important is your number one goal. You know, once you've overcome these shackles, I would say, you know what I mean? These things hold you back, that you need to have this to be happy. You need to have power. You need to have sex. You're a prisoner to all these things. When you're free from that, and that's what the soul really wants. And the more you question yourself, you want freedom, but not the kind of freedom the woke people say. The woke people think freedom is from all rules, but actually it's the rules that give you, that channel your power to the real freedom. So that's kind of, I think you were saying all sorts of beautiful things, but I felt like maybe they needed to be clarified, because you've read this stuff for so many weeks that it's become like second nature to you. Is that right? Did you think?
No. It's, I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, the thing is, His Holiness's essay is a spectacular, how do you call it? A philosophical essay, and it covers so many points that the great philosophers previously had already covered, and he puts it in a way to explain his religion with those 5 questions. So you have to put it in context. But yes, totally.
Cool. I'm highlighting our only live chat comment at the moment. Disney movie vibes. I don't understand it, but you can explain that more. If anybody understands it, I mean, do you understand what he's talking about, or she's talking about? Ramiz?
I don't know. I think maybe they're trying to say that this entire concept of the soul, right, is like a Disney concept, maybe.
Yes.
Disney vibes is the good soul vibe that we're talking about.
Okay. So he might be saying that we're just talking rubbish, maybe. And so I kind of want to maybe get to the bit where there's more evidence to support what we're saying. I'm still going through the short version, and we're 40 minutes in. I'm failing already. Oh my God. Let's just, I'm going to read through stuff really quickly. So, and let's get shorter comments. Let's say, okay. So, trying to double click. There we go. Feeding the soul. Religion has always had the answers. So you made a comment in the WhatsApp thing. I don't know if we're going to be disagreeing about this, but I don't think just general ideas like love or whatever are enough. And you said something about, and we're going to get into this a bit more later on, but you said something about don't stop feeding the body so that the soul can wake up. Something I'm paraphrasing, right?
Okay,
and that's largely true. I fast twice a week for that reason, right? But at the same time, there are some times when you're supposed to eat properly. And that's, for example, and I talked about this, like when you go to a party, and in Islam, we're supposed to encourage to eat, not overeat, but eat properly rather than, like, if everybody was saying, you know what, I'm not going to eat, and it's a party, then the connection that that food creates between people doesn't happen. So it's such a precise science, and that's why we need religion. We can't create religion, but we can analyze each of them steps and look at the evidence through psychology and biology and all these things, and we'll go, yeah, religion was 100% on the mark. What do you any thoughts about that?
Well, what I was saying when I wrote to you, when I said to feed the soul, we must first stop feeding the body. What I meant was with all forms of hedonistic stimuli. Because, at this particular point, I think if we both agree that dopamine is that end thing, isn't it, for happiness, that dopamine buzz. So to feed the soul, it was like stop feeding the body that dopamine buzz. You don't need to be shopping. You don't need to be running around having sex, stuffing 20 donuts and continually doing that kind of things. It's like take a break from that and concentrate on your spirits. So the idea of not feeding your body was really not like food, but in all senses of like that external stimuli that you seem to enjoy. It's like when you fast, you know the difference in feeling that you have. There is a completely, when you pray and you fast, there is such a difference between prayer and fasting and prayer on its own. It's it's very difficult to explain the links between them.
Yeah, I would put it like different things. Maybe when you're, one thing is that one of the reasons why I need to fast is because I know I have to say today I'm not going to be stuffing my face, right? When I say stuffing my face, it doesn't even have to be loads of food, but coffee and whatever, right? And you're barraging your senses so that you can't listen to the quieter stuff or the subtle stuff called spirituality. And that's the thing I think so many people struggle with. It's like they see TV and they see bing bang explosion, whatever, people getting high on drugs, and they think it's there, and it's sort of counterintuitive that real happiness, you can be really struggling and be way, way happier than any of those people, I don't know, who are on drugs and things like that. And it's the way I try to put it is just a different dimension. Your people are this way, kind of up and down, and it's a very limited up and down because, you take your drugs or whatever it is, and you think it's going to make you really happy, but there's kind of a cutoff where your body can't even sense it anyway. In fact, if you eat too much, your body is disgusted with the food, the beautiful food that was in front of you. So there's a very limited bandwidth of the enjoyment that materialist experience, but there's an infinite direction, in a different direction, different dimension is the easiest way to describe it, called peace, if anything. So that's the thing I'm trying to encouraging people to to try. Let me quickly say something here. So, for the people, and the person is correcting or the misunderstanding that I'm going to get to, but there are going to be people who are going to so what's this wishy-washy whatever stuff? Do you know what I mean? And I want to kind of say through this, religion has always had the answers, borne out by science that came to prove it right. Islam, a precise, incomparable guide to life, and we can discuss if it's incomparable, whatever. We can take guesses like Westerners try and see how it is failing them as their depression rises. So they take guesses as to maybe this is what spirituality, maybe that is, but that doesn't work. That's what Westerners are doing right now. They're thinking this is spirituality, that's spirituality, and they're still depressed. It's not working. But if you look at Muslims or people who are following religion, even if I disagree with so many Muslims about their, they seem to ignore, there seem to be violence sometimes, as we've talked about, and there's certainly missing very basic teachings of Islam. They still seem to benefit in so many ways. Their families seem to be growing more than Westerners who have nothing, right? So what I'm trying to get people to see is the big picture. Look, there's these religious ideas and they seem to somehow work, and science keeps supporting them. What's going on here? And these people are not even particularly intelligent. They just follow these rules and their lives turn out better. And all I'm saying is, please, don't ruin your life. Just look at what's happening. Don't be stubborn. Don't be stubborn, and don't follow the Hollywood propaganda that you just need freedom and you'll be happy. That is that propaganda has been going for so many years that people have swallowed it deep and absorbed it as if it's the truth. I mean, that's the great struggle at the moment. I think people think certain things are definite realities. Freedom means happiness. Absolutely not. We have only limited vision. We cannot predict what is good for us, but we are able to judge if something is good for us when the evidence is put before us. So people say, I don't know. I try not to filter too much. So the first thing that comes to my mind, and I've seen movies that made fun of this, is, for example, what's the word? Oh God, I don't want to describe it too much. When Muslim babies are born, male boy babies, and Jews do it as well. Circumcision. And people make fun of it, why would you do this terrible thing? And then many years later, they go, oh yeah, it's actually cleaner, it's healthier, stops STDs and blah, blah, blah. My point is that there's something going on with these religions. They seem to know the answers, and everybody else are screwing up big time, and they seem to be much more intelligent. That's all I'll say about that.
I think you're quite correct. The religion that's been handed down to us is thousands of generations old. I mean, it goes back. It's tried and tested. When people tell you to pray to God, it's because it has a value. When they say fast, it has a huge value. When they tell you to behave in a particular way, they're making you into a civilized, rational person. It has a value. It's very, very important that we take these things on board, because if we are going to feed the soul, these things are important. And I want to go back to the point on fasting. When we fast, science has proven that when you're in the fasted state, neurologically, your dopamine receptors become desensitized. So the sensitivity increases. So the moment you break your fast and have a reward, the dopamine becomes so intense than any previous experience, and it's longer lasting. Now, what I want to say is, when you're fasting and you love God and you pray, you're going to get that benefit. Not only is your dopamine decreased, but your happiness with God is longer lasting. I know it sounds very difficult for people who don't understand that. All I can say is, look, we're rational people here. It's not like we're mad. Just try it. A belief in God is not a bad thing. To behave in a particular manner is not a bad thing, especially if it's going to increase your happiness, and it definitely will. I mean, here you are, Muslim and a Hindu, both talking about happiness and the soul in the same way. For other people who don't believe, it's quite simple. It's written in our religions. You know, all you need to do is follow the religion properly.
And the funny thing is, you're talking about fasting. I gave the other example, but the fasting example is probably a better example because all the fitness gurus are like, fast. Do you know what I mean?
The thing is,
yeah, go on.
No, I had this problem. Whenever I do a diet, I can't stick to it. But if I do a fast, there's nothing. And my fasts are more extreme than a diet. But I will not even contemplate on breaking a fast. But if I'm dieting, it's shall I or shan't I kind of scenario. They're two different things. You know, but the West are taking on fasting, but all for the wrong reasons. It helps physically, but spiritually, there's nothing else you can compare. It is like, if you can imagine, the ultimate drug that gives you bliss, and that is prayer.
There's so much I could agree with, but I'm going to stop trying to reiterate to make the videos shorter. But yes, absolutely. And then I'm going to quickly look at this. So it says, hi, sorry, I meant about the mistake of the Western people made looking at for salvation through childhood fun or fantasy. It's like associating an old Disney cartoon with nostalgic values. So yeah, I'll tell you something funny. I realized that I have actually not too long ago, I just realized I was strongly affected by Disney movies. In terms of the women I found attractive, basically the different Disney princesses. And I'm somebody who thinks I'm independent. And that taught me a lesson. Like, I was just thinking, why do I, and then for some reason it seemed to click that, you know what I mean? It's really weird. It seemed to be, So sometimes how do I put this? Although I'm telling people, Westerners, don't do this, don't do that. You know what? I've been there. I used to be an atheist as well, and so many other things. So if I'm insulting atheists or whatever, I'm not really insulting atheists. I'm saying, please don't harm yourself. I'm talking about there's so much science behind this. Don't do this. Don't do that. I've been there, done that. So many other things we're talking about here. I like to keep reminding people that I'm nothing special. All I'm trying to say is I'm trying to help. This stuff is easy. And why is the suffering in the world really didn't have to be what it is. Cool. And I like to click all the comments, even if it's compliments to me. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to say something that comes to my mind. I don't know if you watched yesterday's stream. Very controversial.
I did. I watched this.
You did, yeah.
I did.
So hopefully, I don't know if you'll still be a fan if you're an Ahmadi Muslim, but I think there's a lot going wrong. I'm just going to show the summary of that because a lot of people misunderstand it. I was speaking to an imam just before this on WhatsApp, and he thinks I'm a terrible person or something now. But I don't think he understands. I don't think he understands the subtleties of what I was trying to say. Basically, I think there's a Khalifa, and he's saying one thing, and unfortunately, I think our people are stuck with their culture more than their religion. And it's not a surprise to me because part of a prophecy anyway. So I'll mention the prophecy. There's a prophecy that in the latter days, the sun will rise from the west. And people take this literally. It's a silly idea to take it literally. Basically, it means the Western people would adopt Islam in a way as if they had the religion all along. And what that means also, and the dark side of it, is that the Eastern people have lost almost their right to it. And I think a lot of them have, because they hold fast too strongly to their culture. And that's what I was talking about yesterday. And I think it's a bit of a sad issue, even amongst Ahmadi Muslims. But that's a whole discussion. Do you want to make a comment on that? I think we're going over time about everything. Do you have time, an extra half an hour or something? Because you have.
I'm
Okay.
fine.
Because we've barely touched on the topic, but anyway, do you want to make a comment about yesterday's video since you're here?
Well, the thing was, I was quite surprised at the reactions that you're getting from your own community. And I'll be truthful, I'm a nationalistic Hindu. Don't get me wrong. I'm totally into my religion, my culture, and everything. But you are the first Muslim whose behavior, whose approach to Dawah has ever got me interested. And that's got to be the biggest achievement, where you've got me reading your prophet, His Holiness, the Promised Messiah's essay and studying it. That's got to be an achievement. And the only reason I did this was because you get inspired by other people's behavior. As far as I'm concerned, you are a good example of what I see or what I'm learning about regarding Islam. Now, in my studies so far, approaching it from my own perspective, I feel quite sad, because I'm starting to see the beauty of Islam, the spiritual heart of Islam, through the eyes of the Promised Messiah. And through that, I'm looking at the history of Islam, and it makes me feel very, very sad, because the way it works, this is the way, as a kafir, I see it.
A kafir, disbeliever. He's using a lot of words there, but
Muhammad, peace be upon him, he had a difficult task. He united the Arab tribes under Islam. And unite is a very important word. But when he passed away, peace be upon him, Islam divided. That the very thing that the Prophet Muhammad had achieved, Islam seemed to have divided. And this carried on and carried on. And I sincerely believe that His Holiness came back with the idea of reuniting Islam back with its heart. Now, the problem is you've got too many influences here, and you've got various schools of thought within Islam which aren't very tolerant. And the example being Wahhabism. That is a very extreme ideology, and which doesn't seem to, having looked at it, doesn't seem to have that spiritual heart. Whereas 100%. His Holiness is going back to the spiritual heart of Islam. And that's the most amazing part of it. I see myself as a Hindu. Yes, this person's had a revelation from God, because he's got a task. The thing that, God sent Muhammad down. Allah sent Muhammad to unite the tribes. We divided. They divided. They need to be guided back. You all believe in the same God. It's the same book. You are Muslims, regardless whether you're Sunni, you're Shia, or whatever you believe in. To me, as a Hindu, you're all Muslim. I do not see the divisions, and I don't think Islam should see the same divisions either.
100%. And I think people have accepted the divisions, which is really sad in a way. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to reiterate. As I say, I love absolutely everything you're saying, so I'm not going to reiterate. So fantastic. Okay, here we go. Some sort of scientific reality or proofs. There is so much. I'm wary of saying all of it. I'm just going to say a little bit of it and let people read the rest of it. Okay, so I'm going to go one micro bullet point out of the many, many bullet points of each section, right? So if we describe the soul as something that feeds on spiritual actions. I wonder why I wrote that. But anyway, so it's logical reality. Yeah, okay. Now I remembered what I was saying there. Okay, so if you define the soul as something that needs something spiritual, okay, now people think, oh, spiritual is a big word. So let's say, what is I'm probably there's an overlap there, but psychologists say we need meaning. But what does that even mean? We need meaning. It means doing good things. It doesn't mean doing bad things. Oh, how do you describe that? That's spiritual. And we're told that's what something in us needs. What is that something? It's definitely not, we don't get fatter, it's not physically consumed when we do good deeds. So it's something else, call it the soul. I think that was the point I was trying to make. There's something that needs this. Something about us that needs these good deeds. We are happier when we do things for other people. This is not a religious teaching. Literally, do you watch TED Talks? Do you know what TED Talks
I
are?
do. I've watched various TED Talks, yes.
Yeah, there's one called How to Buy Happiness. You literally buy coffee for other people, you get happier. Okay. Oh, that sounds like a religious teaching. Call it spiritual. So I don't want to go into too much, but there's something about us, and it only takes a tiny bit of reflection. Oh, that's important. Let's call it the soul. Let's not make it complicated. Let's call it the soul, because you're not going to point it out on my nose or my head. It's somewhere else and you can't see it. Any thoughts about that?
Well, the thing is, as we were saying, logically, it's quite difficult to define what the soul is. But there is one thing that happens everywhere: is those near-death experiences people have. They all seem to talk about this sort of like traveling towards the light. Now, this is not a physical thing. This is a spirit. This is a soul. So they all seem to be describing the same kind of phenomenon. So if you look at that from that perspective, there seems to be something there, although it's anecdotal. It seems universal that there seems to be this distinction. When a person has that near-death experience, where they have that out-of-body experience. I think that goes a long way to support the idea a soul does exist, separate to our body.
Yeah. I used to be doubtful about out-of-body experiences, but I did a live stream maybe 2 years ago with somebody who had one, and he's a very close friend of mine. And I was like, he doesn't lie. So it's like, okay, yeah. Probably does happen, and yeah, the whole idea about, it's very interesting. The whole idea, I kind of don't want to sidetrack, but it is very interesting that can the soul be separate from the body? And if you read, as you've read the philosophy of the teachings of Islam, it's born within the body and eventually has the capacity to leave the body. That's a very interesting whole discussion. I think in the philosophy of the teaching of Islam, it was described as the soul is inherent. I don't want to go into it, but it was interesting. It was, the soul is inherent to the body as fire is inherent to flint. I don't know. Have you got to that bit?
I have.
And yeah, and so when the flint, fire. So fire can exist outside the body given the right environment. Let's say something woolly or something like that, right? But sometimes that environment doesn't exist currently, so it can't survive outside the body yet. But maybe at some later stage it can. It was just an interesting thought I've been thinking about, but I'm not sure if it's relevant. I'm trying to not be academic and nerdy. I really want to help people, so I think I'll leave that. But please do read these other comments. I'm going to move to some of the other ones here. Biological. You know what? You were talking about dopamine, shutting down the dopamine. I'm not sure about that 100%, because the most powerful dopamine that I understand, that actually there's two kinds of dopamine pulls, as it were. There's the one that where you consume and you feel a very temporary high of consuming something, right? And if you consume too much, it doesn't work anyway, right? Because you start feeling disgusted by eating too much and consuming too much. But there's a very powerful dopamine system that drives us to reach higher goals. And again, that's magical. If you think about it, it's like, again, your biology, or the reality, the scientists who are looking at the biology of our system, our biological systems, are going, oh, that's essentially a religious teaching, to reach higher and just keep reaching higher. Where does that go? Only one place, called God. Do you know what I mean? It's something like biologically is built into you to keep reaching higher, and not just jumping higher and meaningless things. It's got the psychologists or the biologists say it only works if you try to do something good. It's just amazing. It's just that everything is pointing that way. You just have to be a little bit open-minded, and you'll just see all the arrows pointing one way. Religion has always been saying it. You need God. I mean, I could just keep going on. Please read it afterwards. But Any comments?
I think that I agree with you. I think what I want to say, it's quite similar. I'm going to sort of misuse Nietzsche at this particular point on purpose.
Yeah.
But the thing here is the Übermensch, the Superman idea, to be the best of what you can be. And if you play the spirituality to the Übermensch that he talks about, it makes a lot more sense that what we're doing, as you're saying, that dopamine for higher and higher achievements, is that we are becoming the best that we can possibly be. It's that we are actually giving our body and spirit, or soul rather, a chance to evolve to its higher state, to become the Übermensch, like Nietzsche talks about, but in a spiritual sense rather.
Beautiful. I think it's so important. I think we're both Jordan Peterson fans, aren't we?
I'm not a huge fan of Jordan Peterson.
No, you're not. Oh, okay.
I like what he. I mean, he says a lot of brilliant things.
Yeah.
It's just his personality grates on me sometimes.
Oh, okay, yeah. You know what? Well, interestingly, I'm going to disagree about one thing, but as I said, most of the things, I think he's done a lot to bring spirituality into the scientific realm. I think. What do you think, so far about that, at least?
But I think spirituality has always existed, right, in the scientific realm.
Yeah.
What's happened is it's all changed in the last few hundred years. I'll give an example, right? Let's take the two biggest learning institutions in the world, okay? Oxford University and Cambridge University. Now let's go back to the 16th century. And the motto in the 16th century of the world's best learning institution, Oxford University, was "The Lord is my light." And that was, at that point, science was trying to sort of show and prove all the wonders of God. And even to that point, the physics laboratory in the 1800s that was opened in Cambridge University had this wonderful quote etched on the walls: "Great are the works of the Lord, studied by all who delight in them." And that shows that wonderful relationship that science was once there to sort of reveal to us and make sense of God's wonderful work. Nowadays, it's almost like science demands that we prove that God exists, when really science was actually created as something to sort of explore God's world. So, that sort of like distinction between sort of science and God, it's blurred, because at one point, science was all about God. It's just now with atheism and our changing of our values, we demand proof of God, whereas once it wasn't required. Otherwise, you wouldn't have such mottos in such learned institutions referring to God.
And amazingly, you talk about Oxford and Cambridge. I can't remember. I think it was Oxford was the first one, the first university. Yeah. And that came about by a monk who learnt about universities from Al-Andalus, Islamic Spain, where there were the first universities, and the first ever university, I think, was in Morocco, whatever. And they were all religious based. And right now we're kind of fighting against the truth, which is God exists. It's like, it's an obvious reality, but I don't want to. Yeah. Okay. So what else? You know what? I'm going to read this thing I tried mentioning to my wife, and she understood it. And I think this is the heart of everything I kind of want to say. So let's see how it goes. Okay, understanding the soul is essential. So many people try to find happiness the way they. I kind of said a lot of this stuff, haven't I? But anyway, many people try to find happiness the way they used to find it when they were younger, and this leads them to depression, because that person you were when you were a child no longer exists. From sperm to baby in womb to growing human, our consciousness is growing whether we like it or not. We no longer accept defecating in our nappies, that means pooing in our nappies. Our awareness is too high. Doing pointless things when we were children was fine, as we simply followed our instincts. But as we grow in power, those uncontrolled natural feelings for anger and desire will cause us to overeat, steal, and fight, causing us and those around us great harm, not hard. I'll correct that. So I think I've changed it since I read it to my wife, actually. This animal self is a self that incites to evil. Okay, so this is kind of pointing out the first stage of soul development. It's so what's wrong with being an animal? Animals seem to be fine. Actually, if you look at animals, there's pretty violent stuff going on there. Even my cats, pretty brutal. And so when we're babies, it seems to be fine. We need some milk, we cry, whatever. But if we just go by our instincts, that's a dangerous place. You have a sexual. I was watching a video. It's like, thankfully, they were talking about like, thankfully, we don't just follow our sexual urges all the time. Otherwise, that would be havoc. Do you know what I mean? And so there's a natural. People say there's a big thing. I think it's part of the woke ideology. You feel it, you should do it. But that's so dangerous. And this is the beginning. We need to get over our basic animal instincts. And how do we don't get over it. That's probably the wrong word. We need to guide them. So in interesting description of what sin is in Islam, it's going beyond the boundaries. It's like, yeah, your natural urges are fine. God made them, so they can't be entirely wrong, but they're wrong when they go beyond the boundary, like sex. Very important. You need it. You're made to need it, okay, to keep the species going, and not just that, other things. I think to have babies, to have children, to have dependents, and to take care of people who are weaker than you. There's many other things, related to that makes us civilized people. But then there's sex outside the boundaries, and it's so harmful and it's so dangerous. So that's the introduction to the first stage. Don't woke people and whoever it is, don't fall for it. You need to channel these energies. Yes. Yeah, I don't want to repeat it. Any thoughts about that?
No, I totally agree. I mean, the thing is, it's when a child is born. That's why our parents sort of guide us. We've got all those sort of desires, just like a wild animal would have. It's those rules that are instilled into us, those values that are instilled into us that help us, or help our soul rather, progress from the animalistic state of just hedonism to the next stage of being sort of rational. And again, if you think about the happiness at the hedonistic stage, it's very, very short-lived. You have sex and tomorrow you want sex again. You eat in the morning, you want food in the afternoon. They're very, very short-lived kind of happinesses. And as you progress by understanding the soul, you also learn how to sort of increase the happiness that you're getting. And finally, you reach the point where you will have real everlasting happiness, is when you actually realize that one truth. It's really difficult, but it's there, it's free, it costs you no money. It simply is to believe in something. And I would say to anybody, just search for God. There's enough people out there trying to guide you, saying, come, here's our holy books, here's our teachings. I mean, Christianity, Islam, they're all going around trying to convert people. Buddhism does. I'm saying to people, I don't convert people to any of my religion, but sincerely find God. There's enough religions out there, and there's people that will guide you on the right path. And I can most sincerely say, it doesn't matter which religion you follow, but if you follow it purely, you will achieve ultimate happiness. And in that way, I would recommend, people to follow the Ahmadi, ideology, because I think this would be quite a good one. I mean, to be truthful, I was quite disappointed because I wanted the Rational Female to also read the book at the same time as I was. So I could have had someone to sort of, push ideas backwards and forwards. And I think that she would find huge benefit.
Did you point it out to her? She tried it? Maybe I'll ask her.
No, she knows I'm reading it because we've spoken. I've been studying it. I've talked to her about it. But,
yeah.
She knows that I'm recommending that she should read it, but she's got this idea of like, oh, well, I might, I don't want to be Islamic. I'm saying, it's not
Okay.
about, it's not, you won't become Islamic by studying a brilliant piece of essay. It doesn't work that way. It just gives you a greater understanding, not just about Islam, but about religion in general. And most of all, what we've been talking about, your soul. Because if you ask yourself, what is the soul? That soul is that unique part of us. We grow up in the same family, but we're never the same as our brothers and sisters. We're taught in the same school, but we're not the same as everyone else. We are unique. That unique aspect of us. This is when we sit down and say, who am I? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? And you slowly uncover these sort of like riddles and work towards that one point that will make you absolutely happy.
Yeah.
And all the people that listen to your happiness channels, I would say to them, believe in God. And the wonderful thing I'm going to say in this journey was, I remember contacting you and I said, Khalid, Rob, right? I says, is Rob another name? And you says, yes, yeah, Rob's another word for Allah. And I said, that's very strange, because all my life I've grown up praying to Rob.
So, yeah, wow, beautiful.
Exactly. It's almost like Rob, and Rob for you. Well,
but for people who don't understand, Rob means basically in Arabic means the gracious is one word for it. But it means the one who gives you so much, like air and everything, and doesn't even expect anything back for those things. There's another quality where God wants you to. Anyway, that's basically what it means.
It's not the Hindus. I'm not the only person who grew up saying God, Rob. The Sikhs say Rob.
Yeah.
So I mean, we were all actually using the same name of God. We can call him Allah. But Allah has 100 names.
Yes, that's right. And one of them is
Rob. Is one of them.
And what's the key one after Allah? Yes.
Yeah. And even after the Sikhs have Rob as their God, Ik Anka Rob, and we have Bhagwan Rob. There's a beauty in the religion, and all I want to say to people is, it doesn't matter, just believe in God, follow the religion, do good, and you will really sincerely find happiness. It will be real happiness, not short-lived. It'll be happiness. Life throws curveballs at you. We all get things that are going to make us feel down or whatever. But if you've got this, it will buffer you against all the harm that society or life sends your way. We do get hurt. We do get upset. Life doesn't give us what we want. But if we've got this connection with God, your soul will always find peace at one particular point. No matter what the world does, God is that place where you will sincerely be able to have that sort of sanctuary from all the madness that goes on around you. And that's why I say it doesn't matter which path that you follow, just follow the path to God. God exists. There's only one God. Just go there.
Cool. I'm going to reiterate. Go. I'm going to reiterate 3 things you said. So, first of all, thank you for pointing out the way you were saying it made me want to phrase it this way. You were talking about the different stages and knowing the different stages of the soul. And it made me think, what we're really saying is, really just, if you know yourself, then you will know how to find happiness. So just knowing the reality that we've ignored, if we're Westerners, of the soul and how we can see that it's changing. You were not the same person you were yesterday and things like that. Your needs are getting more complex and subtle, in terms of meaning and doing something meaningful with your life, and you can't escape that. If you're aware of yourself, then you can find happiness. If you're unaware of who you are and what you are, you can't find happiness, and that's why people are so depressed. The other thing, and I didn't go into it because it was just I was agreeing, and people who've seen my videos at Speaker's Corner, I'm talking to Christians and telling them, be good Christians. Never mind becoming a Muslim, be a good Christian.
Yes.
Okay? And there is so much good in it. I wouldn't agree with everything, but you know what? The things that I disagree with, you probably wouldn't do anyway. For example, it's okay to kill slaves, whatever. I think that's not part of the original teaching, but things have crept in. But who's going to do that? Who's going to get a slave and start killing a slave? No Christian's going to do that. You know what? Just do the other stuff. I'm sure, you'll have so much more peace. For example, don't think twice about getting married. get married. You know why the Muslims get married? Because they don't think twice about it. They think this is the thing. And then all the people are thinking twice about it. I've done videos and there's articles about it. All the people who end up lonely at the end of their lives, they thought, you know, it might work out. I'll have a boyfriend, I'll have a girlfriend, whatever. It'll work out eventually, but it's not my priority. Muslims are the opposite. It's like, forget boyfriend, forget girlfriend, bang, straight in there. And guess what? It works out much better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what
Totally.
yeah. And the last thing, the thing you said about just make your aim God, okay, and you'll find peace. Guess what? That's a verse of the Holy Quran. It says, those who is in the remembrance of God, their hearts can find comfort. And so if you don't accept it, you know what? It's a very simple challenge. Anybody's watching, test it out. I'm gonna give you a really simple test. And if it works, don't go back on this, right? Keep going forwards when you experience this. All you have to do, feeling stressed, whatever you're going through, just start contemplating God. Like, not a stupid idea of God, like that doesn't make sense. Just think of the all-powerful, the one who gave you everything. Just contemplate on it. And if it doesn't work, you disprove the Quran. Because if you disprove one verse, I don't know if I'm exaggerating here, but it's a test, right? And it's actually born in science as well. Like, for example, if you're just surrounded by nature, you're effectively I don't know if you're really contemplating on God, but in a way, all you're really seeing is the creation of God. That's a reflection of God. And guess what? It's the most powerful antidepressant. That's what the scientists say. And you know what? I'll just say one more thing. There was a really great video on Big Think about how an atheist psychologist professor is saying, you know what? I got to say, everything about religion, from God and all its teachings, make you bulletproof, basically. He just finds it annoying that it does everything. It's like, you believe in God. Oh, you believe in somebody who benefits you and you can talk to him and it'll work. Psychologically, bang, that's going to work for you. And everybody knows it works, right? And on top of that, all these other teachings like go to church, go to mosque once a week, get together. Oh, wow. We know, psychologists know, you need to be together. You need to, it just keeps going on. So maybe I've linked that video in so many times in my thing. So maybe just search it this time, because I got tired of linking that video. But Big Think, benefits of religion, you probably find it. Yeah. So I'm gonna stick to trying, because I'm gonna cut off time. Of 8 minutes left. Let's see what we can do in 8 minutes. Yeah. So I highlighted, but I didn't read this. But even a soul that starts a spiritual journey has ever-growing needs, such as meaning. It needs meaning. We talked about what meaning means. It means doing good things, higher and higher goals. As Viktor Frankl explains, at this stage, you inhabit the soul that tells you off. Okay, there's the philosophy of the teaching of Islam that says uses harder words, but I like
the reproving soul.
The reproving soul. That's right. I'm a teacher and I'm a school teacher, so I dumb down the words. Okay. So the link to the verse, whatever. This is why depression is rocketing in the most affluent yet godless countries. This is why people who are nostalgic have poor mental health. So this is a very interesting idea, right? Okay, they live in the past, hoping to return to childhood pleasures that their grown-up soul will no longer accept. We are built for progress. The happiness hormone dopamine pushes us to set high moral goals and work towards them. This is often known as the growth mindset necessary for good mental health. So this is another thing I want to point out. Okay, people who are overly interested in the past, they look back, oh, how wonderful things were. That's really dangerous. So maybe if somebody can take this away, because I've noticed this in people who I know who are depressed, who are really struggling in their lives. They love to share videos of the past. This, remember that, remember this. I don't do that. I'm all about the future. I'm always looking forward. My past was great, but my future is much better. And it's a reflexive verse of the Holy Quran that those essentially it says every moment in your life is better than the moment before. I'm paraphrasing, but if anybody wants to know these, I can find it, right? But this is essentially this is the journey of a spiritual person. Of course, it's the journey of a spiritual person to always be improving. Otherwise, there's something wrong. There should be evidence that what you're doing is working, and it should be that evidence should be your life is getting better, and you shouldn't be looking back. I think if somebody takes that away and realizes how dangerous looking back is, and that's a sign that you're going to be depressed. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think you're quite correct. I mean, the whole thing about life is to grow. All life grows, and if we don't grow, we sort of stagnate or corrupt in that particular way. So the highest ideal basically is to ensure that we are growing, trying to achieve that sort of higher self, which is most important. Because without knowing our higher self, without knowing who we are or where we are, we can't see the future. People keep looking back at the past because they can't see the future anymore. Whereas with religion, it's all laid out for us. We can see there is a future. We can see it somewhat differently, and we've got a more positive, hopeful attitude towards the future. Whereas those who can't see the future are perpetually sort of in that cycle, lost, being nostalgic, living for past glories or past pleasures, basically, which is not going to be available now. It's a very sad state to be, where you can't see anything in the future, but only the past.
Yeah, I love the thing you said about with religious people, they're always looking forwards or whatever. And it makes me think about marriage, for example. Like, if you're not religious, you think maybe marriage is the goal in itself. But no, for religious people, it's part of a journey to becoming a better person, And so everything is leading to something else further. That's exciting, to be leading to something else further all the time. So what can you be? So in Islam, Prophet Muhammad said, well, first of all, he said, if you don't get married, you're not like me. That's pretty harsh. But it gets people like, this is where it's supposed to be going. But also it says marriage is essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but half of religion. It's like, how is it half of religion? Because, well, it's a funny thing. It turns a tough thing on its head, because people will rightly say marriage is hard work, but that's actually a good thing in a way, because to be married, you have to be kind to somebody. Let's say if you're a man, you have to be kind to somebody who's weaker than you, your wife, for example. You have to be patient, all these other things. These are half of the religious teachings you need to go through. And if you do them, it's not a bad thing. You just become a happier person. Because let's say you become more patient. Guess what? You have better relationships with everybody else in the community as well. So I'm not going to go on about that. But yeah, I love your point about with religion, it's just forward. There's no, this is the end. This is just leading to something even greater. How exciting.
Yeah.
Cool. Last bit. Go on. Were you going to say something?
I was going to say, again, the most wonderful metaphor here is eventually, if you follow this path, you will reach the point which, again, His Holiness describes in the essay, where you become like a waterfall gushing down towards God. And I want to use that word, where suddenly that loss of ego, that funna, that complete state where you are in bliss with God. It's the
ego that was getting in the way all that time.
That's
all
right.
These stupid ideas. Like, if you think about what the ego tells you to do, is so stupid. It's like, okay, my ego telling me to buy an £80,000 car and have. How stupid is that? Oh my God! Like, it's your own brain making you do such painful things like buying a really how many hours you have to work for this stupid expensive car. So, and what's the reason? So somebody else goes, yeah, you're the man. And actually, they won't care. They'll say that, and then they'll like, oh yeah, that guy. That'll be yesterday's news, right? How stupid. So you want to get rid of these egotistical ideas because it's bad for you, and it's getting in the way, and all these things are getting in the way of your happiness. So I'll very briefly, because now you talked about it, I'll very briefly talk about this called the soul at peace. That's what you're talking about. This is obviously from the Quran as well. So this book, Philosophy of the Teaching of Islam, is all based on the Quran, if people are wondering. But anyway, we desire to be free of this constant nagging of the soul. So the constant nagging of the soul is the intermediary stage where you've left the animal stage, but you're still messing up. And it's like, I messed up again, messed up. And it doesn't feel good, right? Because the soul doesn't want to be dirty, as it were. Right, it wants to be at peace. So we want peace, and the higher moral goals that allows our lives to be meaningful, that Viktor Frankl says we need to be happy, point to our natural attraction to the Most High. So we're always going a bit higher, and yet I don't know what I've written here, and yet hidden to the eye that has not been trained to feel subtle yet essential needs of life. Our soul desires to reach the state the Quran describes as, O soul at peace, return to your Lord, well pleased with him, and he will be pleased with you. So enter you among my chosen servants and enter my garden. So there's a few metaphors. Garden means paradise. In short, our soul desires God, and we can only do that by letting go of our selfish animal desires and live a moral life guided by, what have I got here? Precise teachings of God through Islam, which means peace, as that is what your soul gets by following it. Yeah, I'm not sure if the whole thing made sense, but yeah. So all I wanted to say was, you don't want to be having a nagging soul all the time. So what does that mean? You want peace. You want freedom from that. So anyway, I'm repeating myself. So any thoughts?
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, that is the ultimate level that we all need to achieve, because once the soul is at peace, then your happiness has been fulfilled. It's the ultimate state where we can achieve happiness. Otherwise, we're not going to achieve that ultimate happiness. That soul at rest is the thing that all of our religions, the teachings of our mums and dads, our schools and religious institutions are leading us to the point where our souls can be at rest. And if you think about the word, the soul at rest in itself implies a peaceful happiness, a rest, away from that turmoil and madness. You know, the soul at rest is going to be the ultimate pinnacle of what humans should be trying to aspire to.
To put it into a bit of context, because sometimes people, I would say a fake Hindu guru. Do you know Sadhguru?
He's not much of a guru, but go on.
But he makes fun of the idea that Muslims have of trying to attain peace. He said, peace? What's that? And I think he hasn't really understood it. Basically, peace is like thinking you're the richest person in the world. What does that mean? Let me explain that. So I watch a little different videos. I like this guy called Khabib. He's not perfect. He's a UFC fighter, retired UFC fighter, and he became a world champion and all this kind of stuff. And the person who had given the fight, he said to him, Khabib, how come you never ask about how much money you're going to get? He said, you know what? I just need to talk to my mom and I'm happy, right? And he's a Muslim, right? My point is, and what his point was, is like, he doesn't need much. The people who are not at peace, they keep needing more and more. Mike Tyson said it. He said in a beautiful way. He said when he was rich and winning everything, he had no peace. And he said it in such an amazing way, and so many beautiful ideas. He said, when you have no peace, you feel like giving you all your money away, because it's to hopefully get that peace. And when you have that peace, there's a fantastic saying of Prophet Muhammad, like, peace, you can say, is related to contentment, and contentment is the most I can't remember how he said it exactly, but it's the most solid form of, or no, the word was, it's something to do with solid and something that doesn't run away from you too much, right? It's the most solid form of richness. It's like, basically, I feel lucky every day. I just have to wake up and I'm lucky, but it doesn't just happen. As soon as I start feeling selfish and my ego comes in, I suddenly feel like the unluckiest person every day. But when I let go of that, it's like, yeah. So I'm gonna try to finish off here. So there's so many. The next section, I think we've already said it. Basically, the next section after this was basically follow these religious teachings, because we can't figure them out ourselves. That's what I was going to say, basically. But the thing I was going to say just now is about when you let go of your ego, what happens is, okay, the only way you can let go of your ego is to start serving other people. Okay, so what happens when you serve other people? Let me put it something like this. You solve 1 million problems in 1 second. It's something like this. What is most people's idea of success? To look good in somebody else's eye. It's really that. It sounds stupid, but that's what it really is. But when you don't care about yourself and you're just serving other people, all of that's just vanished. You're already successful. I mean, you already feel successful. And success. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to say much more about that. But really, it solves 1 million problems in 1 second. When you let go of all the burdens of being important and you just do things that are beautiful, helping people. I don't need 1 million views. I used to get way more views when I was in Speaker's Corner, right? But you know what? I enjoy doing this. And these are way more meaningful conversations than what I had in Speaker's Corner a lot of the time. Like, I would get 10 times more views just because somebody's being rude and not listening to me, which is not a really good conversation. Right now, I'm having a wonderful conversation. Whatever. You have the last few words. I'm going to stop talking.
All I'm going to say is it's been a wonderful conversation with you. I totally agree. I've really enjoyed discussing theology in its beautiful aspects, because the thing is, you come from the Islamic perspective, I'm coming from the Hinduistic perspective, but we're showing the world there's only one God. And one God, and we're explaining that's the best way to get to him. And really, if you follow these principles, you will achieve ultimate happiness. It's been wonderful talking with you, Khalid. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate so much your time. Thank you very much. Thank you. And you're the perfect person to talk to as well, having researched this whole thing. I could have. So thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. Bye.
Bye.